the monopoly of bourgeois liberals by way of politicizing ordinary people, working classes. If the task of the 20th century was to politically awaken the immense rural populations of Asia, Africa, Latin America, and so on, maybe the principal task of the 21st century is to politicize, organize, and discipline these excluded, destructured masses of slum dwellers. And this is why, although I do not idealize Hugo Chavez, he's doing many crazy things, I think it will not end well, but honestly, one thing I think is this eternal achievement. For the first time, he really politicized the excluded. Not in this humanitarian way, rich ladies going there, sympathizing, how horrible is in our rich society is starving them. He mobilized them, included them into a political process. So, to stop now, this I see as the four spheres of problems today, where I don't think they can be, in the long term, solved within the global capitalist frameworks. Of course, they are not of the same order. The first three concern, again, what Hart and Negri call commons, the shared substance of our social being. First, we have the commons of culture, what some people call socialized cognitive capital, language, communication, education, and so on. Then we have the commons of external nature, our natural environment, threatened by pollution, exploitation. And then the commons of internal nature, the biogenetic inheritance of humanity. Now, in the remainder of my talk, I want to focus on ecology. Why? Not because it's the most important one, not necessarily, but because I think that it's maybe the crucial example of ideological struggle today. Why? My thesis will be very radical. On the one hand, the problem is absolutely a real one. My God, we are talking about survival of humanity. On the other hand, ideology reigns in today's ecology. Namely, let me clarify a few things. What is ideology? Ideology are not crazy, abstract ideas which obfuscate real problems. The power of ideology is that it deals with very real problems, but gives them, how should I call it, mystifying twist or spin, in the sense we talk today about spin doctors and so on. So that's the seduction of ideology. No? When you attack an ideologist, he will say, but don't you see that these are problems? Let me give you, before I go on to ecology, let me give you another example. Tolerance. I am more and more tempted to reject the very notion of tolerance. Why? Of course, on the one hand, it designates a real problem. Namely, when I attack tolerance, people immediately attack me. Are you crazy? But don't you see intolerance, racism, sexism, and so on? Don't you see that this is a problem? Yes, but what I claim, let's go to racism. What I claim is that it's not self-evident to reformulate, to perceive the problem of racism as a problem of tolerance. And here is ideology. Listen, if you don't believe me, you can repeat my experiment. I went on the internet and downloaded all the main speeches by Martin Luther King, the great figure of the 20th century fight against racism. And I put, you know, simple search, tolerance, intolerance. The word practically doesn't exist in his vocabulary. Why? For him, American white racism against the blacks was not the problem of tolerance. It was the problem of political equality, economic justice, and so on. For him, it would have been humiliating and ridiculous to say, we blacks want more tolerance from divides. And if you are a feminist, and I hope you are, a woman with a minimum of feminist pride, you would also find it ridiculous, humiliating to say the goal of feminism is that more tolerance from men. It's a bad joke. So again, the true question is, of course, what we perceive as intolerance, racist, violence, and so on, is a problem. Why is this problem perceived as the problem of tolerance and not of legal equality, economic justice, and so on? Here we see ideology at work. Real problem mystified. The answer, I think, is that we more and more, we are approaching so-called post-political era where, let's call them naively, the real problem, political power, economic regulations, and so on, are more and more depoliticized, so that whenever battles are fought, they are always translated into cultural battles, conflicts. For example, in the United States, the only way that any reference to exploitation and class struggle survives is that you talk about the exploitation of Mexican immigrant workers, of the blacks, and so on, and then ideology enters. No? Instead of talking about economic exploitation, you somehow, even if you don't say, act as if the root of economic exploitation is our intolerance towards the others. All of a sudden, the problem becomes tolerance. I think there is an ideological mystification at work here. And the same goes even more for ecology. In what sense? Today's ecology is predominantly the ecology of fear. And as such, it fits perfectly today's politics, which is a politics of fear. As you also learned, I think, in your last elections and so on. Today we have this anonymous, expert, technocratic, post-political administration. If you want to move a step over it, to introduce what once was called passion into politics, the only way, which unfortunately even the left follows, is to evoke some kind of a fear. Fear of immigrants, fear of terror, fear of natural catastrophes, whatever you want. It's fear. You can gather and mobilize people through fear. This ecology of fear, I think, has all the chances of developing into our predominant ideology. A new, I'm ironically here using Marx's term for religion, a new opium for and of the masses. Namely, it takes over the old religion's fundamental function, that of putting on, of installing an unquestionable authority which can impose limits. The lesson this ecology of fear is constantly hammering is our finitude. We are not abstract Cartesian subjects extracted from reality. We are finite beings embedded in a biosphere which vastly transgresses our horizon. In our exploitation of natural resources, we are borrowing from the future, so one should treat our Earth with respect as something sacred, something that should not be unveiled totally, a power we should trust, not dominate. This is why, although ecologists are all the time demanding that we change radically our way of life, underlying this demand is its opposite. A deep distrust of change, of development, of progress. Every radical change can generate unintended catastrophic consequences. It is, I think, this distrust which makes ecology the ideal candidate for hegemonic ideology, since it echoes the anti-totalitarian distrust of